I just gotta do this thing here. No, well, that's fine too. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, we are. Oh, there he goes. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live. This is episode 1000. Everybody, I can't believe I'm saying this, and I did 1,000 episodes, and I'm going to say it's one of the most pleasant surprises of San Diego Comic Con. So, no, I'm serious. It was. So, folks, I got to tell this story. I'm going to tell this story real quick. So, there was a treasure hunt going on for the indie comic community in San Diego Comic Con. I followed it along the first day because it's a great way to see the con and catch up with some old friends too. So Eddie, it was the end of the journey. Like, he's the last stop on there, and I'd never seen his comics before. And I look at his comics for about maybe a minute or two. I hear his pitch, and then I go to him. You really love your wife, don't you? And that was actually legitimately the first thing I asked him. And he goes, yeah, I do. It's like, how'd you, because here's the thing, folks, if you look at his covers, most of them, right, his wife's prominently featured on them. And then I realized without ever actually reading Eddie's book, I never had read it, that this book is really about two things. It's about his love of collecting, yes, but really it's about his love of his wife. And that was my first impression of Eddie Deangelini. Did I get that right?
Deangelini, yeah, you got it right. You're close enough.
Yeah. But that was my first impression of you. And and reading your books, I don't think I was wrong.
Oh, well, one, I'm honored that you read them, and two, no, you're not wrong.
Yeah, no, it was just, of course I read them. Like, no, okay, I've done a lot of these. You have to respect the work everybody puts into their stuff, right? All right, not every comic I'm going to read is going to be my cup of tea. That might be the truth, but that's not the case. Yours was actually genuinely hilarious. Like I said, I'll be reviewing it somewhere down the line, but you worked your ass off on those. And if nothing else, I can appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to put that much work into your stuff. I got to respect it. I'm going to at least give it the courtesy of it being looked at.
Appreciate that. Go on.
I made you feel good like 10 seconds into this.
I appreciate that, everything you've said. And yeah, I do love my wife. Yes. And for anyone who's watching who has no clue who I am, my comic strip is based loosely on myself and my wife and my little circle of friends. And my comic book collecting and all the nerdy stuff my wife puts up with living with me. And I do have to thank you, because what you didn't touch on in that little story was that you said, you know what you should do? And anytime anyone comes to my table at a convention and says, you know what you should do, my first thought is, oh, here we go. Because it's always something that I probably should never do. But yes, in your case, what you said actually made perfect sense and worked. Yeah. You said when guys come over, you should approach your pitch from that collecting angle, from the comic book angle. You know, catch them that way. When women come over, or if you're talking to, say, the girlfriend or the wife of the guy that's at the table, you tell them that ultimately my comic strip is a love letter to my wife. Yes. And they all had the same reaction that you said they would have, which is, "Aw," yeah, and they want to read it. Exactly. So I used that tip after I met you, after I saw you that day. And yeah, absolutely. You know, it was a great marketing tip. Yeah, no, it was just because it made sense. I saw it immediately, like legitimately. Like, I don't know why I picked up on it so quickly, but I looked at your work and it's just like, this dude really is in love with his wife. Really. And that was literally my first impression of you. And yeah, like, you got like it. That's why the book works. Like, honestly, it's about a very real place with you. And that's why it will sell, right? Right. What you just neglected to mention is the other half of what's real to you in that story, which is the love of your life. Absolutely. Yeah. The loves of my life. Exactly. That's even better. And my wife.
Yeah, exactly. And that actually is that would be like the blurb in the back about the two biggest loves of your life, my comics and my wife. And there you go, done. Well, yeah. But anyway, man, no. So we haven't really talked much since then. I was debating about how to do this because I enjoyed your book, but I also realized, like, like you like again, you're a big collector. So I was wondering, like, so do we talk about the collectible things like that? Because you obviously were a big fan of the hobby when you started as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's what started the comic strip to begin with, obviously.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, there's so many things we can talk about when it comes to what I do. It could be the fun of collecting and the hobby and what I think of it. It could be about my relationship with my wife. It could also be about, the other things that I do that are comic related. I don't know if I mentioned to you when you're at my table that I also co-own a comic book shop.
No, you didn't. Although I did read it in the back of your. By the
Yeah.
way, the other thing I really dig about your book, you have a letters column still, which I think is actually freaking cool.
Oh, of course. Not only a letters column, but
Yeah.
also the little value stamp like Marvel used to do.
Yeah, yeah. No, I really dug that. Like when I saw that, it was like, okay, no, dude, this dude's an old school fan. So when did you start reading? Like we'll start with comics. We'll work our way to everything else, but we'll start with comics.
Sure. When did I start reading comics? Man, that was when I was very, very little, and I'm going to show my age. It was the 1970s.
So you was so okay. So my favorite books from that era were Jack Kirby's DC stuff. Love that stuff. Like for me, like if I when I make it rich and shamelessly with my art stuff, like honestly, the run I'm going to get is Camedy, the Last Boy on Earth. Love that series. It's every
Yeah,
comic shop,
it's
every
a
comic
wild,
shop.
wacky series.
Yes, it is. But every comic shop guy, and we'll get to you, and I can tell you're one of them too. They look at that series with a smile. They always do. And I always feel like there's a little bit of despair when I look at the comic book owner that really has that smile because they love it, which means you're paying full price to get it out of the store. Because they.
Exactly. Yes. Yes, totally.
Yeah, no, but no, there's some really neat stuff. There's some really neat stuff in the '70s. So what was it with you?
I was much more Marvel. I loved Spider-Man and I loved Daredevil.
Spider-Man
Those
was
were my
awesome.
two famous, most favorite characters. And my introduction was when I was in grade school. They had a program where the students in the class could order books. I forget what service it was, but you would get an order form and you would check the books that you want, bring in your money, and then hand it in to the teacher. And then I don't know, like a month or two later, those books would come in and get distributed, whatever you ordered. And they always had little, and I wish I had one here to show now that we're talking about it. There were little pocket digest paperback sized collections of Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, the Hulk, and they were
Oh,
all the early
yeah,
ones. Like the first volume with Spider-Man one was issue 1 through 6 from the original run,
the
Stanley
original.
and Steve Ditko. And same thing with the Hulk and the Fantastic Four. It was all the original stuff. So that was my introduction. I didn't know who these characters were, but it looked neat, it looked colorful, and I wanted to read it. And so that's where I just fell in love with that. And then it led to riding my bike to the local liquor store, and they had the spinner rack, and then I would pick up Spider-Man or Daredevil or whatever. And if I was homesick from school, my dad would always stop off and at Thrifty's or whatever store and go to the spinner rack and pick up comic books for me, whatever he recognized. I recognize that Spider Guy thing, so I'll just get those. So yeah, that was where it all started.
That's really cool. Like honestly, no, so in my opinion, yeah, it's still the best Spider-Man run is the '70s run because it was the one with the most evolutions of the character.
I can't disagree. I mean, I love the 60s because that's like
Yeah,
the classic. In my mind, I love John Romita Sr. drawing Spider-Man. That's like the quintessential Spider-Man to me. In fact, if you were a kid growing up in the 70s and you would see all the advertisements, because by that time Marvel was really expanding and advertising with toys and posters and things, it was always that classic John Romita Sr. art from the 60s that was always used in promotional stuff and back in the 1970s. So that's what I instantly recognize, as far as like what I think of as my Spider-Man. So
hmm
yeah, there's that. and there was like all kinds of just very huge stuff in the series for the character in the 70s, like you're saying. You had, the Punisher came out back in the 70s. You had the whole story of Gwen Stacy dying, and Green Goblin dying, and introduction of other characters like the Black Cat. So you had all that in the 70s as well. And then the 80s, you had the Black Suit come up, and then the 90s, you had the Clone Saga. We don't talk about that.
I'm a Green Lantern fan. I have Emerald Twilight. I understand your pain. I do.
The truth be told is, by the time the 90s came, by around, I don't know, late 80s, I stopped collecting comics.
Mm-hmm.
I was getting, older. I graduated from high school. I was into motorcycles and, cars. I had an older Mustang that I was always, trying to restore. And I was just so into that. And then I just blew through the 90s, not even reading or collecting or anything. So it wasn't until after the 90s, and maybe like somewhere around the 2000s, 2010, whatever, somewhere mid 2000s, I believe, is where I kind of just came back to it and started remembering, oh yeah, I used to love this stuff. And now I want all those old comics that I used to have back when I was younger. And I want to kind of read new stuff and see what it's like. And I just got right back into it.
Yeah. And to all fairness, folks, a little joke, like there's some really good stuff with Spider-Man in the 90s. Venom, for example, is fantastic. Like just the idea of Venom is just an amazing concept. But yeah, I mean, it's the Clone Saga. I mean, that's what everybody remembers. And
I mean, the 90s were a bit overblown in so many ways, as far as the art, the stories, the kind of getting away from the more simpler stories about characters and just going into the whole kind of anti-hero, ultra violence kind of mentality with a lot of 90s comics, which I'm not a huge fan of. I really want stuff that's a little more grounded. But I tried to go back and read some of that 90s stuff, and some of it hits, a lot of it doesn't. I kind of just don't really give it a lot of credence,
there's a lot of people that because obviously I started in the late 80s 90s, so I grew up in the 90s era, right? So now again, we all are fans of our eras, but what I've learned as I've gotten older is there's great books in every era. You just got to know what they are. In the 90s, you have to kind of look either the early 90s or the late 90s. The middle, we just best not talk about. But the early 90s got some amazing stuff. The late 90s has some amazing stuff. The middle, there are exceptions to this, but the middle wasn't great, and everybody kind of knew it. And
yeah, well,
right?
It really, I mean, if you look at the way publishing was going then, you had the early 90s where things were hitting, that whole kind of 90s kind of vibe was starting to hit and take off. And publishers just ran with it and just made it into this big bloated thing in the mid 90s, to where unfortunately a lot of it kind of just bust. You had print runs going wild, on a lot of books. You had so many people wanting to like outdo each other with the anti-hero characters and the ultra violence and the just wild out there splash page art and everything. And I think it just got a little bit too much. And then, like you said, in the late 90s, I think publishers started to realize, well, we went too far that way. We got to kind of rein it in a bit. And you had other stuff that came out that was actually really good, like the Marvel Knights line.
Yes.
Started, and it was actually very well done.
Yeah. And so there's the Marvel, the Marvel Knights, the Ultimate line. I mean, can't be overstated how good the Ultimate line was. And the other bright spot I think in that era was the Vertigo line with DC. Like there was some really good stuff in those realms. And it's just like I said, it's like anything else, right? There's peaks and valleys. Like even in the 70s, yes, you have some great runs, like you just mentioned, right? Batman and Robin was, like I mean, there are things that just in every time period, just they don't stand the test of time. Even today, like I look at like what's here now, I actually think in some ways right now is the most underestimated time in some ways, because I think the quality of books are as good as they ever were, but I think the big difference between today then versus say previous eras, you're not in a big you're publishing on your own, and you can develop a fan following on your own a lot easier today, and to the point that, okay, I'm sure you wouldn't mind the prestige of a logo like DC, Marvel, Dark Horse, Image, whatever the case may be, but you may not need it for what you do, because it's just like, and it's just a different era. So I think what's going to happen with this era is, so not just you, but there's a lot of great books in the indie realm of things that I think are just quietly big hits or really good books that I think are going to be lost in the radar, right? When we look 10 years from now, it's like, there was this amazing pile of books, but you can't find any of them anywhere. I think that's what's going to happen with this era. Is it's going to be the era that when the demand for it finally does show up, it's going to. I mean, the books today might be worth the most because they will be like damn near impossible to find.
Yeah, yeah. But you make a good point though about people like me don't really need Marvel and DC.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a very valid point, because there's plenty of people like me who have been working kind of like you say under the radar, but have been building a fan base, building a career, building a body of work, and we're doing it without without having to wait around for the big two to tell us, hey, come on and step up to the majors. We're making our own major league in a sense that we can kind of step up to.
Well, I hope you take this as a good comparison. Your book reminds me of a combination between something along the lines of Archie, a little bit of Archie, a little bit of like modern sensibilities, i.e., like some of the stuff you see on television, American Dad, Family Guy. You got a little bit of that, which you're obviously your personality. DC or Marvel wouldn't know what to do with that book. They just wouldn't. They just wouldn't. And it's not a knock to them actually either. It's not what they do. Right?
Absolutely.
Right? So, I mean, Archie might be able to do something with that, but I mean, they got their hands full as is,
Yeah. What I could hope for at best is maybe a smaller publisher, even maybe Image, because they will release a large amount of genres, all kind of unrelated, that are creator owned. To hope for maybe a smaller publisher to pick it up and put it out and distribute it. But then at the long run, why would I need that?
Yeah.
Because I can just do maybe that same exact work on a much smaller scale, but all the money that's made, I'm keeping. I'm not worried about just getting pennies on the dollar for every copy. If I go through a distributor or a smaller publisher or anything like that.
No, the only value for that for you, honestly, and this is the question. I mean, and then this is the business. This is you flipping. This is the pros and cons of the business. Is there an audience you can't reach easily that you think would like the book? And
Right.
that's the only real question, right? Otherwise, yeah, why would you? And again, this isn't an insult to the publishers either. It's just you have a cool little niche and corner of the universe, right? Why the hell would you? Why would you mess that up?
Right.
It's already there.
Exactly. At the most, what I would do in a situation like that, I would work. Like if a smaller publisher approached me and said, hey, we want to distribute some of your work, I'd be all for it. With the understanding that this is probably going to be maybe a one-time thing, maybe a short-term thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing already on my own.
Oh,
I'm just going to have that as a supplemental thing along with what I'm already doing. The idea now of like a smaller guy like me saying, oh, now that a publisher's come calling, I can stop doing all this stuff on my own. I can stop self-publishing on the web or self-publishing in print on my own, because now they're going to take care of me. And now I'm going to work for the company. And that idea is completely, I think, just shooting yourself in the foot, because you're going to do that. You're going to sign a deal. Maybe it goes for a few months, a year, whatever. And then they say, okay, well, we don't have a place for you anymore. And if I was already continuing on with what I'm doing on my own and allowing a to have a deal to be able to do that. Once that other thing with the publisher comes to an end, I'd be okay, I'm just going to go straight back to what I've been doing and work and build on that still.
Well, it's also just, I think at this point it's silly. Like, okay, maybe you shut all that down if they pay you a stupid pile of money to do it.
Oh
right?
yeah, I'm absolutely up for selling out for a
yeah,
load of money.
Yeah, no. I mean, look, I mean, we're like, let's be honest, we're all businessmen at the end of the day, right? So if the right offer came around, sure, but yeah, but I mean, the thing is, at this point, publishers are looking to expand their audiences however they can get them, right? Because again, I think the big problem today, if we talk about the industry as a whole, is comics cut off their distribution. And the other big thing about the mid-90s we did not talk about is it was the death of the old distribution model. And the old distribution model allowed these stupid print runs, right? Yeah. They allowed the crazy print runs. They don't have that distribution anymore. So unless you have a comic shop in your area, you can't go get, like, you can get Archie. And that's why I brought them, like, they're like the only comic you can get at a grocery store today.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And more to the fact about doing it on your own is there are plenty of guys like me, guys and girls like me, who aren't being nationally distributed through Diamond or Lunar or any of the distributors, and who aren't being published through an established publisher. They are doing it on their own, and they are using forms of revenue, bringing in revenue through different channels on their own. And, you know, although it's very hard and to do, but it is possible, they are creating a living for themselves doing just that.
It's actually weird because you might actually be out, you probably are outselling, like seriously outselling on a per book basis books published by bigger companies now, right?
It's surprising how, at least the smaller ones, maybe, but people would be surprised to learn what the sales numbers are for some of the books that they see at the comic shops.
Yeah,
they're actually quite small.
Yes.
It used to be a time, especially like in the 90s, where, you know, titles, even smaller titles from the big two, are routinely breaking 100,000, 200,000 or more, you know, like that. Like back then in the 90s, X-Men, obviously we know that the X-Men #1 sold in the millions, but, you know, continuing on with the series, every month it was selling, and this is not just what shops ordered, but actual sell through, you know, 500,000 every month easily. And there are no titles at all now that do those kind of numbers at all.
No, there might be
selling through like 50, 60,000. That's a hit right now.
Yes, in the big two, in the realm, right?
Right.
Because I don't know what Archie sells. I imagine it's still a pretty ridiculously high number, but
actually it is, and people discount it. They think, oh, Marvel and DC, Spider-Man, X-Men, Batman, those are the big sellers. You'd be surprised. Why? Because like you said, Archie is distributed in way more places than those other books. You can't walk into a Walmart or a grocery store and buy the newest issue of Batman. Well, you can buy, you know, several copies, different copies of Archie Digest easily.
Yeah, and so what if, and again, and folks, just do some math at this. There's grocery stores everywhere. Even if only one copy of an Archie Digest gets bought, let's say at each store, that is hundreds of thousands of copies. Not even trying. Like that is just basic math. Like, and that's, so when you look at the comic book industry, this is also why Archie doesn't deviate too often from their bread and butter. They figured out a formula. It's relatively cheap to make, and they can do it. It doesn't mean they don't try other stuff. They still have the World Circle characters. They still do stuff with them every so often, but
Archie is like the Rolling Stones. They've been doing the same thing decade after decade after decade because it works.
Exactly. And if it works, why would you try and fix it? Right? Yeah. That's the thing. Like, that's the other thing about the mid-90s. Like, my favorite era of talking like comics reading overall is the mid-80s to like early 90s, because I think some of the best stuff comes from that era. That's my opinion. But again, we all are products of the eras we read, right? So that's when Watchmen, Dark Knight, that's when Sandman, that's when like Peter David's Incredible Hulk run was going on. Marvel, George Perez's Teen Titans run was in that era. John Ostrander's Suicide Squad, Hawkworld. Like, I'm going more DC centric, but like honestly, Marvel was killing it too. Like the X-Men was on fire with Byrne and Claremont, and there was just so many good books in that era, and they kind of refine even the industry to this day. So that's my favorite era. But the 70s, like I said at the beginning, there's good books in every era, right? Even right, you just have to know what they are, and some eras are harder to peruse than others. This era today, I think, is going to be the hardest one to peruse, because I'm going to show your book again because it is good. This is a great book, but you can't find it anywhere as easily, right? Yeah, exactly. There you go. And by the way, that was the cover that made me realize it. That was the cover.
I'm rather fond of that one too.
Yeah.
Although it's nice too. I got to open it up later. I personally hate reveal videos when people are unboxing videos on social media. You know, someone gets a new comic or a new toy or whatever, and they are unboxing it, because it's always the same. They take way too long to unbox it. They're not being engaging or talking or, you know, making it entertaining for you to watch somebody unboxing some big wieldy box. And then by the time they open it up and you see what it is, you're like, oh, that's all it was. I don't care about that. But that's all to say that after we're done here, I'm going to do my own unboxing video, because I got the proof copy for the newest book that's going to be coming out real soon, Collectors number 7.
Congrats. I'm just going to say that right now. Congratulations.
You've seen the cover for that, because that was the little standy thing that I had on my table. Comic-Con. That was literally, you mentioned Archie. That was literally the Archie homage cover.
Yes. No, I remember it. It's really, really sweet. Congrats. I am going to say congrats. That's the 7th issue. Comics are hard to make. Like, the other thing that should be stated is there are a lot of work that go from start to finish.
They are. The most, flattering and annoying thing that someone can do at my table at a comic convention is if it's like a 2 or 3 day convention. They come up the first day and I give them my pitch for my comic, and they go, oh, that sounds interesting. Oh, I like, yeah, okay. And they buy like the last couple or whatever. They buy 2 or 3 of them. And then they come back the next day and they said, oh my God, I read them all. I couldn't put them down. I read them all in my hotel room when I got back, and I loved them. When's the next one coming out? And so I just see that one that you just bought. I literally just finished that. It came from the printer like a month ago. Give me time. Glad you liked them, but it's a lot of work.
Well, I mean, but again, it's the natural. To be fair, it's a natural response. I mean, I write novels. Same thing. So 2 weeks after.
How long does it take to write a novel? You know.
If I'm on a roll, 3 months. If I'm on a roll.
That's fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
I actually know someone else. When I mentioned other people who, like me, are building a career doing just this without having to go to a big publisher, a big distributor, or anything like that. One of them is a good friend of mine that is also, he does do some graphic novels from time to time, but he's also mainly a prose author. And he does a series of novels in his own kind of fantasy universe. He knocks them out like in 1 or 2 months.
Yeah, no, you can, like, there's so the thing about novels like prose, don't get me wrong, I'm saying I'm on a roll. It's not a sustainable, like, I don't know. I know one person, and she's a romance author. By the way, I'm not knocking romance, but there are formulas in romance a little bit at least, right? So she cranks out a novel like once every 6 weeks, or she did up until there. And it was like, and you were like,
you've got that set kind of formula where, okay, you know, it's basically steps from A to B to C to D. Yeah. And you just come up with new characters each time to fit into those into that mold.
Yeah. There's that. I mean, but also, I mean, when you write that much, you get, like, again, more prolific you are, the better, the quicker, the more efficient, right? I can put a podcast together in like a matter of minutes now, whereas when I started, it was more like a matter of hours, right? Not including the actual interview. So I just can bang it out so fast. But that was practice. So you got a bit of both. Comics, because they are so multidisciplined. Like, okay, yes, you're writing a comic. Although you're writing a comic, then you're also you got your penciling, then you're coloring, then you're inking, then you're lettering, right? It is a giant process. Now, if you have some of those skills yourself, wonderful. You can speed it up a little bit. Only a little bit, right? Because you don't want to. The other thing too is it's a competitive thing to get comics. Because, like, I got news for you. Like, I liked yours, but there were some really, really good ones from San Diego. I had to say, like, there's so many good books I had to choose from, and it was just like, this hurt my soul because I can only take so many of these. And also, I had Canadian money, so you were all like we both were sharing, like we were both laughing. You slightly out of pity, me slightly out of despair, just because of the difference in the currency value.
I will admit, though, this San Diego Comic-Con in particular was a really fantastic one. There were a lot of great creators, and granted, there are always a lot of great creators, but I think this year we were really, really showcased.
Yeah.
It was a great year, and sadly, I don't think it's going to be replicated again next year.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, this is my theory, actually, that I was talking to my wife about this the other day.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, this year San Diego, obviously because of the strikes, there was no Hollywood there. There were no big panels. There was no big Hollywood things going on in Hall H. A lot of the big movie stars weren't there. The big premieres of any TV shows didn't happen. So everybody was on the floor of the exhibit hall, and they were all discovering comics again. The exhibit hall, and you can agree, was just packed every single day.
Dear God, that was I've shown people pictures, like, from here in Calgary, because they're like, what was it like? I have a picture of a giant Chewbacca, and they just look at the aisle. And then I tell them the scary part. At best, I'm showing you a quarter of that aisle. Not the hall, the aisle I was in. At best, right? And just the ginormity. And yeah, it was nonstop. It was packed. There were people, like, so many people from so many different walks of life there, and it was wonderful. And I think, but I have an interesting counter theory for you, something to actually
give
consider.
You mine. If you want to give me yours, I'll give you mine after.
Yeah, I don't know if Hollywood makes the same impact next year when they resolve, because if I'm San Diego Comic-Con, this is me, business hat here, okay? I don't think I need you. And the reason why I say it like that is, yes, we sold the event. Yes, all this stuff happened, but we packed the house. Like, the house, there was not a single day in that convention that it was not insane. Like, there was not one. I was there all 5 days. I looked at you, right? I was there all 5 days. It was batshit crazy in a fun way. I want to go back as a professional again next year. I think I made a good enough impression with enough people that I think be like, yeah, you can come back. but if I'm Hollywood, I shit myself a little bit, because the idea that they were the draw kind of got pissed on hard. I think San Diego is the Comic-Con is such an event unto itself that I would say Hollywood needs them more than they need Hollywood. My opinion.
My theory is actually coming from the other.
No, that's fine.
And first off, I'll remind you that the strikes happened after all of the ticket sales for San Diego
Oh,
Comic-Con happened.
absolutely.
So there was some people saying, well, I don't want to go, and they wanted to return, get a return, get a refund. But a majority of people, I think, were of the mindset of, but I've always wanted to go to Comic-Con. This is on my bucket list. I'm not going to miss it. I might not be able to go next year. So they went anyway. But I think it's going to come from the studios and not from San Diego Comic-Con. I think San Diego Comic-Con will want Hollywood and all the big spectacle back again next year. I think it's going to be the studios who say, and not all, some of the studios are going to sit down and look at their numbers and say, in the past, what were the actual benefits of us being at San Diego and spending all this money to have a presence there? What kind of return did we really actually get from that? And on the flip side, when we didn't go last year, how much money did we actually save? And if we decide to not go, or maybe go and have a much smaller presence to save money, how much of an impact is that still going to make the same impact as when we spent a whole lot of money? And I bring a perfect example I bring into mind is the Scott Pilgrim movie.
Mm-hmm.
They spent a boatload of money on that movie at San Diego Comic-Con. And did it really translate into numbers afterwards at the box office? Not really. So they're going to start looking at that. Is it translating into numbers at the box office for us afterwards? And if not, why are we wasting our money?
I half agree with you. I'm going to say this. I half agree with you. This is I don't know if it happens next year. And I'll tell you why I think it doesn't happen next year.
It might take a little bit of time for them to realize this and come to terms with it, and just realize that either it's not worth our time or we're just going to have a smaller presence.
I think it's going to ultimately go to the smaller presence is what I do think it is. It's going to be smaller presence. I think it's a threefold answer to this. The first is I don't think they can ditch San Diego Comic-Con completely for one simple reason. I think the public relations beating they're taking right now, I mean, in terms of what they're doing, is going to require them to do some save face stuff for at least another few years. That's the first reason. The second is I actually am of the mindset that San Diego Comic-Con needs them less than the Hollywood needs them. That's just my reasoning for this is this. I think the strike, we're talking about we mentioned this with comics, how the fact that you don't need to go to a big publisher. The longer this strike goes, the more other people are going to be making. The other thing we didn't mention here, actors and stuff were at the show, but they weren't promoting anything from Hollywood. They were promoting their own projects.
Exactly.
Right.
Or just being there for photo ops, but not talking about.
Yeah. But almost all of them have a side. Like I speak from experience from interviewing them. Almost all of them are always working on something, whether it's for a studio or for themselves is the question. But the longer this strike goes, the less leverage the studios are going to have for a bunch of reasons. One, the AI rulings are not going in their favor right now, which is a good thing for all of us. But I mean, but it's not going in their favor. Two, the longer it goes, the more people are going to, okay, let's just say for the sake of argument, I was an actor. I would be a very good one, but let's just say for the sake of argument, I was, and you were a film director guy. We were like, I still want to make my movie.
I also wouldn't be a very good one, but go ahead.
Yeah, that's okay. We can be both very terrible, right? But you'd be like, so I'd be like, okay, let's make a movie, and you'd be like, it'll suck because we're terrible. And then, but at the same time, it'd be like, we have the opportunity today more so than ever to meet other people outside the mainstream studio sphere to make a movie. The longer the strike goes, the more people are going to gravitate to those options. So there's a time limit with the studios having leverage. Obviously, everything's a game of leverage at the end of the day. Their leverage is dwindling. So they're going to have to settle the strike sooner than later. Which leads to the third reason why I think I think they're going to stick around. Is I think some of the, even if they settle, let's say they settle tomorrow, the movie industry is decentralizing as well. If they're going to want to maintain whatever centralized hold they have, they're going to need access to audiences that they know exist. And San Diego Comic-Con, unless you gutted everything, will always have a big presence. But I do agree with you, it's going to be a smaller presence in the long run for some of the reasons you're saying. Like, I don't know if you want to spend a ludicrous budget at San Diego to promote a project, but I do think you need to be accessible to your audience. And that's kind of where I see it. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. And then to add another wrinkle into this, all of the studios will get their budget and their funds for film promotions for stuff they've got coming in the year.
Mm-hmm.
They get it every January. So if the strike continues to go through the rest of this year and into next year, that's going to also seriously affect whether or not studios go ahead and set up to be at San Diego Comic-Con next year, because they're going to be getting their budgets and need to make their plans come the beginning of next year.
Yeah, if at best, right? So I don't see the strike lasting the rest of the year. I do see it ending before the year is up somewhere, but that's because, but again, it's the studio's leverage is dwindling. That's kind of how I'm seeing it, and right, that's the game. That's the name of this game, and yeah, that's how I see it going. But I do. Because honestly, I'm going to be very blunt with you. I didn't miss them. I had so much fun, not just with the comics.
Yeah.
But I love, my other favorite two stuff, the video game stuff. I think that is really cool, that all the demos and stuff they have there, like they've expanded that since I last, like this was my second trip to San Diego, but this, right? It's like, in comparison to your, like the Street Fighter stuff was huge. The streaming stuff was there. Like there was a streaming section there. It was like, that shit was really cool, right? And then
I already saw more this year than I did. I was chained to my table.
Well, yeah, no. That's the beauty of being a professional without a table, folks, is you do have the luxury of traveling, but you also, I mean, you were selling your books, and you were, and based on just the crowd, probably making a pretty big killing, because it was just like,
it's the best convention I've ever done financially. Yeah, I made the most money at this show than I've ever at any show. In the 10 years I've been doing my strip.
Yeah, so I mean, no, I believe it. So I mean, yes, you didn't get to see cool stuff. I would love your paycheck after the end of that show. but Mazel tov. Like, honestly, dude, you've earned your success, right? So I say it like that just because, like, the show's just got something for almost everybody now. It's like, not just that. I loved, like, the manga stuff. I actually, you want to know the one part of comics I think that's absolutely safe from decentralization? The manga industry. They had bigger like stands than the comic guys had.
Yeah. From a comic shop owner point of view, manga is much more, what's the word I'm looking for here for? Much more safe in this industry as far as problems with sales or anything like that, because while you'll find manga in any comic book shop, you'll find them in every bookshop, you'll find them everywhere, you'll find them in their own specialty shops. They are considered actual literature in so many other parts of the world, unlike here in the United States, where comics aren't really considered real books. But you go to Japan or most other countries, and they are taken very, very seriously.
Oh no, they're an art form. They really, really are. I really appreciate them. Yeah, that's right. So Jag is here watching us. She says, "Oh wow, that's good to know." It's like, yeah, like manga's safe. Like like I also, here's the thing. Like, from a bang for your buck investment. Okay, your book is $6, but I'm getting 60 pages of content, which is really decent, all things considered. That's a really good price for what you're getting. But a manga,
especially from a self-published indie creator.
Oh, absolutely. No. Like, if you could sell that for $10, arguably, and probably still do like that would be in my head. There's a justification for it, right? Like, I can see the logic behind it. Where I like, the other big advantage manga has is, okay, this was $25. It's a nicer edition. There's 200 pages of content in it, right? In one sense, manga and Archie have something in common, is that they're a digest. They're both using like a digest system. and it works. People will pay the money to get, because you get content, you get entertained, right? I'm at the point, like, I still buy singles at a comic shop. I still do. But it's getting harder. Like, that price point makes it harder and harder to just, especially for what you get in those issues.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's why I'm conscious of that too, because obviously owning a shop, I see it.
Yep.
That's why I've always been very meticulous about how I price my own books.
Yeah.
You know, I want to give value for what people are paying, obviously. So yeah,
Absolutely.
the average comic shop, you know, average comic book issue in a comic shop, you know, you're talking about, you know, 20 some pages, and you're paying $4.99, $3.99, $4.99. That's not a lot of content for the price.
And what you're not even mentioning too is, okay, advertisements. A good chunk of that book is advertising, right? It's almost like the newspaper problem, right? Go read a newspaper, like, you're like, hey, this is
Those?
Sometimes they do still exist, but I mean, they're kind of like, you know, the dinosaur system of today. But
yeah,
but the idea is the same. Like, you buy one of those let's say a periodical like that. There's a boat ton of advertising. Now, again, you gotta pay the bill somehow. I'm not knocking anyone for that, but there also comes a point. It's like, well, if I'm buying a 32-page book and I'm getting 20 pages of content, that means I'm getting 12 pages of ads. Maybe 10 pages if you want to go cover to cover. Like, a third of this book's advertising. Like, I can go get a 30-page book for $6 from an indie, and all 30 pages are my story. I'd rather have that. Like, just to be honest.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm conscious of too when I put my own books together. So yeah, you're not going to see that in most indie self-published books at all. At most, you're going to see an ad on maybe my back cover or inside page or something, but it's going to be for my own stuff.
Yeah. But even if you did, let's say you did sell ads in your book, just hypothetically, okay? You're talking what? Maybe 2 in the front, 2 in the back? Like, nothing. It would never be the whole book. Like at that point, you'd be like, what am I doing? Right?
Yeah. Well, they obviously have a much, much larger business model, and they have a lot of bills to pay, and that's how they manage to do it.
Oh, sure. Again, I can't fault people for doing business, but there also comes a point. It's like, it's a very tricky balance with art. It's the value of what you read, right? That's ultimately that, right? And again, I don't mind if an advertisement pays. I get it. Like, again, I'm a big boy. I get it, but I don't want to see non-stop ads. If I do, I'm like, hey, this is really good. Oh, advertisement for Twix. Hey, this is really advertisement for toothpaste. This is really good. Oh, what? Again? Really? Right? I don't want that.
And I think, in my mind, this is just in my mind, and because I do understand the logistics of why that needs to be, but I think of it as, hey, if I'm watching regular broadcast television, there's going to be ads, but that's the price I pay to be able to watch television for free. If I'm paying for a streaming service or a cable service, I know that I'm paying, so I'm going to be able to watch stuff without commercials. So that's my mindset. So when I see I'm paying this much money for a new issue and it's so many pages of ads, it almost feels like I'm being cheated in a way. Even though I do know that in my mind, I understand logically that they're needed for this particular purpose, you know, but it still feels like a bit of a cheat. Like, I'm paying and I still got to see the ads.
Well, it's about the feeling you leave with your audience, right? Like, that's what this is about. Like, we are in the business of creating an impression on people. People to listen to this show expect my big mouth and me to sound sometimes smarter than I actually am. But right, sometimes, right? But I say it like that because, again, it's all about the experience you create with people, and that's the important thing. And people, and a comic, if you again, logically, you need, and in all fairness to any publisher that does this, logically, I get it. You have to pay the bills. You got to do it somehow. You're trying to sell your model at what is considered a reasonable cost, right? I totally get all that. But if you dilute the feeling to a certain point, then people will walk away from the comics. And that's what I think is slowly happening. Like, I think that's why DC was on a giant Batman kick for the last 2-3 years, was because, well, Batman sells. Yes, Batman does sell. I don't want
they're still on that kick. They're still on that kick as a retailer. Yeah, they're still on that kick. A huge chunk of what DC puts out every month is Batman related.
Yeah,
because that's their bread and butter. I don't blame them.
No, I don't. Although it does hurt a little bit because it's like, I get, again, business is business. But at the same time, when I'm surrounded by that many Bat books, it's just like X-Men for me back in the 90s. X-Men's cool. Not that cool. I don't, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Like X-Men? How about more X-Men?
Yeah, if you like your X-Men, how about more? It's like, no, less. Again, you have to protect what your product does. And that's kind of where that's where I think DC and Marvel, I love their trades. I think that's a big reason why I think trades have grown up in value, because again, you get that non-dilution. You're paying, right? Like, if there is an ad in a trade, it's usually at the end. If it is there, it's at the end, right? But the trades are pretty purely the story, and that's why that's what people pay for, is the story. Now, Image and Dark Horse and some of the other companies, they don't advertise as much as DC or Marvel do, but again, you see it in the price points too. Like Dark Horse, it's their average book, I think, is $5 right now. I mean, their prestige ones are $6, right? And IDW is kind of at that border of, some of their books are still in that $5, like $4, $5 range, right? And some of them are $6, and depending on how for lack of a better word, artsy it is.
That's a good word.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, ultimately, thing that, at least for the big two, what a lot of them are doing, when you say, well, they keep putting out a whole bunch of Batman books, or Marvel keeps putting out a whole bunch of X-Men books, which they're both doing because they're sellers. I think that the big two, in a certain sense, they're a little bit lost. They don't have a long-term plan in place. What is the industry going to be like in a year? What is the industry going to be like in 5 years? And where are we going to be in that industry in 5 years or 10 years or whatever? So they're thinking in the short term, well, what can we put out to boost our numbers for this sales quarter or next sales quarter? And they're thinking in that quarter by quarter by quarter, rather than what's the long-term vision. And I think that they're fighting a model that we're evolving into, but they're kind of doing it kicking and screaming. And that model being that things are moving towards trade paperbacks. It's just the way it is. Because you can get them in more places. You can get them at comic shops. You can get them at bookstores. You can get at other specialty shops. They're more widely available. And there are a lot of the new readers that are coming into comics. They're not the type that are willing to come into the shop every Wednesday to pick up the newest issue of whatever books that they like, whatever characters they like. They come in and they go, well, no, I want to read a complete story, or I want to read a whole bunch at once. I don't want to have to come in every week. And so they go to the trade paperback, and then they'll wait 6 months or 7 months for the next one to come out. Then they'll pop into the shop again and buy that. So you've got a model that's gearing more towards that now. And I think that both Marvel and DC don't quite know how to handle it. I think that they're eventually, 5 years, 10 years out, you're going to see Marvel and DC putting out quarterly single issues that are a little bit larger and putting more emphasis on trade paperbacks. And it's just the way it's going to be, because they can't sustain the model of putting out these floppies every week. It's just not viable for them.
It's not viable for anybody, really. And the other thing too is, this is the other thing, I could definitely see them. DC, I mean, I think has this a little bit better setup than Marvel does right now. I think DC, here's the thing. there's an audience for everybody, right? They're gonna have to be more aggressive going after audiences that are not superhero based. One company I'm a big fan of is, believe it or not, I know they're not to the same scale. Dynamite. They know who they are. Like the one thing about them is we'll take these licensed books. I love what they're doing with their Disney stuff, for example, right now. But they also do a lot. They have like a Disney section, a pulp section, right? And they're like, this is our niche. This is where we're gonna be. This is our vision.
Release 50 covers of every issue.
Well, yeah, that. Yeah, but you know what? What they do does have a certain degree of, like, there is at least a vision of who they are and who they're not. I think I think they too are going to go the realm of the quarterly trade route, because that just makes sense. But I don't feel like, I feel like IDW, assuming IDW deals with what they're dealing with right now, like the mid-tier publishers have an interesting opportunity. Like Boom, that's actually a good example. Boom, they have an interesting opportunity in the next couple of years because they've already been diversifying their lines. So they're diversified. Now it's just a matter of finding what really, like, sooner or later, they're going to connect with a home run. And when they do, where do they take it?
And I say this as a retailer, comics are going to have to move out of the comic shops solely and go back to being distributed in more areas. Like you said, you got your grocery stores, you got, your bookstores, your big chain bookstores like Barnes and Noble. They need to be distributed more in there. And they are. You can go into a Barnes and Noble and see a pretty large graphic novel section now. And that's going to have to become more of the norm. And that does not hurt comic shops, because in all honesty, if you have more shops selling comics, that just makes more fans and generates more interest in comics and brings more people into your comic shop.
Yep.
The idea of, I'm going to put all the other comic shops out of business, so I'm the only one and I have no competition, that's going to hurt you, because now you have only one place that people can get comics. And you've now kind of like put up a wall to a whole bunch of people that might have come in and become readers, but now they're not going to go to a comic shop. They might have picked up something at a Barnes and Noble, or, like you said, a grocery store, and gotten into it, but now they're not going to come to the one place. So,
no, monopolies are actually, that's why they're so dangerous. They shrink the pie over time.
Yes,
they shrink the pie. You want diversity everywhere, because the more diversity you have, there's more room for growth. So what tends to happen is, like, okay, let's talk about you and your small scale. You might not even have a percentage point for this book. You don't care, right? Because the market is so big for you that you're just fine. Like, it's fine for you. It's not about market share for you. It's about just units sold and finding your customer base. And that's right. Because again,
I'm never going to compete with any Marvel, DC, or even the smallest publisher. I'm never going to compete with them. All I can do is just worry about building up my own community of loyal fans that are going to always buy something that I put out.
And do you know what big companies still use that model? And that's why they're probably the safest, like, companies to work for. Video games.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I say it like that because we're on Twitch right now. No, it's like, seriously, we're on Twitch right now. Twitch is a video game channel primarily. But I love this place because this is the most passionate fan bases anywhere. And that you will literally go to channels where we watch people play games nonstop, different games, different people, and it's people being enthusiastic about it, right? About a product. Video game companies are smart. They could they could be like, well, this is affecting our advertising. No, this is free advertising.
Exactly.
Right? It's free advertising. It's a community of people that love what we do. Why the fuck are we going to mess up with this, right? Right?
You have all these Twitchers who are building the community and the fan base for them.
Yeah, exactly. So why mess with that? Right? Why mess with it? And that's what comics need. Like, comics need, that's where I think, like, from a big 2, big 3, you got to build those communities somehow.
So we need a comic book version of Twitch where it's just guys like me. You just can watch me read comic books.
Sure. Safe Jag, just so you know, she has defined safe so much Telegram is while video games are decentralizing, they are decentralizing at the slowest rate of all the media. Television is decentralizing quicker. Comics are decentralizing in a way that like comics have decentralized. Book publishers have decentralized. And I say this as a guy that's about to submit something to a traditional publisher. And I say it like with all the respect in the world, right? Right. That's where it is. It isn't say that it won't hit video games too. It has. I'm just answering your question there, Jag. It has. It's just it's happening at a much slower pace than any of the other mediums out there. So when I'm watching you guys, and biggest reason, honestly, are the streamers. It's people like you, like because you are fans of games and you have communities that you hang out in, and that's what works. That has always worked. So there, answering that question, and I'm sure she might have a rebuttal there, but that's all good. That's part of the fun of Twitch, right?
Yeah.
But that all said, so you said you've owned. So did I'm assuming you owned the comic shop before you actually started making comics?
No, the other way around.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I started my comic strip in 2012, and my partners and I bought the shop in 2014.
Okay.
So yeah, no, the strip came first.
That's okay. I would have thought usually when I see it, it's usually the other way around, but that's okay. That's cool. Right. So
the wanting to do something creative and wanting to get it out there, that was well before the opportunity came to buy the shop. Buying the shop was like another experience to have, I guess. Another thing to do that is just totally out of my realm of what I thought I would be doing. So
sounds like one led to the other. That's what it sounds like.
Not quite. There were some interesting things that came out of me doing the comic strip, but owning the comic shop came out of the fact that for my kind of day job, I was working for my now partner who owned his own comic shop, kind of running his eBay store and his online presence and all that. And he came to me when he found out about this other shop that was up for sale, that was available. So it came out of that. The two were kind of existing and still seem to kind of exist separate from each other, but they still intermingle here and there. Like obviously I picked up a lot of, I can put my book in my shop, of course. So I picked up a lot of fans that are the regulars from the shop. So it's kind of nice now when I do a Kickstarter, I can see the names and go, oh yeah, it's a good chunk of my actual regulars and customers from the shop who are now fans. So that's nice. So they're kind of intermingling as well, you know.
It feels to me like both experiences are great for you because you have this ability now to see it from both sides. You see the creative side of things and you see the business end of things. Yeah. And because of that, like, and I can speak from experience. Like obviously doing this show, I've had the chance to learn from people like you and others, right? A lot of creatives struggle with the business end of this, right? Of course. Yeah, you're right. I'm not saying you don't have your battles, because you do, but I think but doing what you've done has forced you to understand what your battles are.
I think that's a very good assessment. I know too many creator friends who tell me, well, I don't want to do all this business stuff. I just want to draw comics. I just want to make comics. Well, that's good and great and everything, but if you're going to be self-publishing, you've got to keep track of all this other stuff. You've got to know what you're spending in and out each month. You've got to know what your print runs are costing and what you should price your book at. You got to know how much money you're spending on whatever supplies or advertising or whatever. You got to know all this stuff. You have to be on top of it, because guess what? Every year in April, the government's going to want to know all this stuff too. So you better keep track of it.
That's part of it, but it's also part of you. Actually, it's more. I'm not saying don't pay your taxes. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying more importantly, you need to know what you're doing, right? Because if you want to grow this, you're gonna have to say, okay, so if I make X and I spend Y and Y is less than X, I'm good. If Y is more than X, okay, am I still in the investment stage, or has it been 10 years? I mean, there comes a point where you got to kind of look at it like that. It's like, what am I doing here, right?
But also to that, yeah, the goal obviously is to make a profit. And if you're making a profit and you have to report all this and you're paying taxes on it every year, great, that's fantastic. But if you're not, also great and fantastic. Keep track of that stuff, because you can deduct it all.
Yeah.
You know what? You probably won't end up owing anything or even get some money back. You know, you
Yeah,
got to keep
absolutely.
track of your business. So yeah, it's essential. You have to do it.
Yeah.
No one's going to do it for us. That's just the thing. If you're, especially if you're like me, where I'm doing everything, no one's going to do it for me. So I better keep track of all this stuff, and I better do it all myself.
Yeah.
So I stress that over and over. And as far as owning a shop and seeing it from the other side, that's taught me a lot too. And it's taught me enough to where a lot of my other creator friends, I tell them, hey, if you want to get your book into a shop like mine, well, here's what you got to do. And don't break these rules, because you won't be taken seriously from any shop if you do. So, be warned. And another thing that the shop has done, which is great too, is this big network of creators that I'm friends with now. So much of it came out of owning that shop, because as soon as you own a shop, or you tell someone you own a shop, every indie creator like myself comes out of the woodwork and says, hey, what can I do to get my book in your shop? And then I end up getting to know them and becoming friends with them. And then, now I got this huge network of creator friends that I have now because of the shop.
Yeah, no, and that's how it works. Like I can definitely speak to this. Networking is the name of the game at the end of the day, right? Yeah. It's about the community you choose to build, wherever it is. Actually, that's what it's all about. And you have to and you got to be willing to do the work. And honestly, that's, as a creative, the hardest part of my job is actually being enthusiastic about my work, because it's so easy to take it for granted. Like, it really, really is. But if I take it for granted, so does everybody else.
To that point, the best piece of advice someone gave me early on was, nobody's going to care about your comic book more than you do. So remember that. One, always, like you said, you always want to be enthusiastic about it and work to get other people enthusiastic about wanting to see it. But also, if you get upset that other people aren't responding or being that enthusiastic about it, well, you got to realize you're invested in it. You care about it more than anyone else will. So if you can get your fans to care about your work half as much as you do, then you're doing pretty darn good.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I actually, but from the business end, before I want to move to my favorite thing. Like I said, we're going to go back to the first impression. I got to know this story. How did you meet your wife?
Okay. Believe it or not, I met her on Match.com.
Oh, wow. Really? Yeah.
Yes. The full story is, I was working a day job in an office in a cubicle. Well, there were some, and my coworkers were mostly all women. And on their breaks, they liked to look at dating sites, and they were looking at Match.com one time, and they were like, checking out the profiles, whatever, of, I guess guys, but they were looking at some profiles of women, just seeing, like, because one of them was actually, one of my coworkers was on Match.com. And so they were looking at the other women profiles to kind of like as comparison, like, oh, is my profile better than hers, or am I better looking than her, or whatever, that kind of thing. And so I was just, hanging out with them in the cubicle while they were looking through the stuff, just kind of, because I was on a break too. And they were flipping through some of the profiles of some of the women. And my wife, now wife, she had a profile on there. So they stopped on it and they were looking at it and they were reading it really quick. And I was like, whoa, 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 in my mind. Anyway, I just really, the profile grabbed me. And her title of her profile was uh, Dork with a Sense of Normalcy. And, and that and her picture just made an impression on me, so that when I got home that night, I was like, okay, I'm going to log on. I'm going to find this profile. So I logged on. I made myself an account, found the profile, and just messaged her. And we chatted for a little bit, I think for a week or two. And then I asked her out. We went on a date, and that's been together since.
Wow. Congrats. That's really really cool. So did she live up to her hype?
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
But yeah.
She comes across as normal, but she's a dork.
Yes. Yeah. No, I again, I think I met her. No, I didn't meet. I did meet her very briefly. I think at the show. Like it was just very, very brief. If she was right, or was I wrong in there?
I don't remember or not. I don't,
Yeah.
because she wasn't there. Although she does some stuff as well in the industry, that she was there as a professional. She wasn't there to work my table or anything. So she was off with her friends and doing God knows what, and just popping into my table every once in a while. So I don't remember if she came by when you were there.
Yeah, I want to say yes, but I could be wrong. I could be misinformed. I could be misremembering that. Yeah, I'm a professional. They give me an award for this, but but no, the whole thing is like honestly, like I think, like honestly, I will say this, with your book, it's funny. But I think the thing that really grabbed me with it is it's actually very heartwarming, all things considered, right? That's the word I would describe it as. If I were to review, when I review your book, it's not going to be the next one, but it's probably the one after. When I review your book, it's probably I'm going to probably say a lot of nice lines like, yes, my impression of him was dead on, and I'm actually going to tell that story. My impression of him was dead on. But also, this book is hilarious and very heartwarming, and it's a really cool slice of life comic, which I think is like kudos to you, man. Like honestly, it's really, 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 really good stuff.
I'm glad that you kind of got all of that from it, because that
Yeah.
really is what it is. It's done out of love. It's done out of love for my wife. It's done out of love for comics, done out of love for my friends. And there's a lot of humor that can be found in there. None of the humor is ever really mean-spirited. It's all
No.
done in fun. It's all done in just goofiness. And I had a formula that I came up with when I first started, because when I started drawing the comics and writing and drawing the comics, that first few months, that first year, a lot of them were of Kristen being mad at me for something. And she said, why do you always have to do jokes with me yelling at you? What if your strip gets, big and you're at conventions and everybody hates me and they throw stuff at me? So, and to the side note, I had actually someone who commented on one of the strips like that when Kristen was being mean and her eyes were all, someone commented like, oh my God, I love Mean Kristen. She's my favorite comic book character.
Yes.
But anyway, I came up with the formula of, okay, well, for every 3 that Kristen is mad at me, I've got to do 1 where we're doing something sweet together.
Yeah.
So it kind of balances it out.
It does. It does. It's so I have a theory about the nature of love, and I speak this far less experienced man than you are. But this is a theory I realized. When you genuinely love somebody, right? When you genuinely love somebody, you're okay with them making you mad. You're okay with them, you're okay with them making you cry. You're okay with them because there's a deep trust and bond. And once you have that, you realize that it's not just the happy or the enjoyable parts. It's everything, and that's what makes them them, and that's why you really love them.
You were never mad at your partner. I think that would be a sign of a not very strong relationship,
Mm-hmm.
because it is definitely those conflicts that make everything interesting, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, if life wasn't a little dangerous, it wouldn't be fun. Like that's just the way it is, right? You need to have a little bit of
Yeah,
that friction. You need
exactly.
it, right?
Sure, sure. Because
Because
it's never going to be exactly the same. There's always going to be something that they do that just annoys you. And
yeah,
there's always going to be something that I do that annoys her. It's just the way it is.
yeah. But at the end of the day, you can live with each other and you can love each other, and that's the best thing. I'm gonna ask this about your strip. How long do you have like a master plan of when you're gonna walk away from this, or is this going to be, for lack of a better term, your peanut strip, where it goes on and on and on until you just you're done with it one day?
I have no plan.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I've already come to that point maybe a couple of times in the past 10 years where I thought, ah, this is too much work. It's not fun anymore. I have no ideas. I can't think of any jokes. I'm done. I'm done. There's just no more gas in the tank. And maybe I step away from it for like a couple of weeks, and then I think, oh, I just come up with like a funny gag, and I gotta go draw that. And I'm just right back to where I was. So I have no master plan to end this. It can go on for however long I want it to go on, I guess. The couple of things that could make me end it would be maybe some other project comes along that is like really prestigious of some sort, something really big. I don't know. That would make me think, okay, well, this is a lifetime opportunity and I need all my focus on this. So I'm going to put an end to Collectors and I'm going to go move to this next step in my life. The other thing would be if someone came and said, hey, we want to make an animated TV show out of Collectors, sell us the rights. And here's a giant check. And you never have to work again for the rest of your life. Okay. No more.
So you put on the Red Devil suit and dance around. I am rich, Eddie.
Yeah.
I am rich, Eddie. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. Hey, listen, man. It's fair. Like you this project, though. This is my impression. Just very, again, I haven't talked to you very long. Generally, I've enjoyed this chat. But what I would say is, you still really enjoy this book and you have fun with it. And I think as long as it has that, you'll always be doing it in some form or fashion.
Oh, if it's not fun anymore, don't do it. That's really what it comes down to in life.
Mm-hmm.
Don't force yourself.
I have 12 rules to success. The 10th rule is, if in doubt, choose the path that is the most fun.
Yeah. Okay. I like that one.
Yeah. It's a good one, right? It's a good one. Keith Giffen, the guy was supposed to be my 1,000th episode, ironically enough, he had a column once upon a time. I took it to heart. If it's not fun anymore, bail. Like, if it sucks, just leave. And honestly, it's really good advice. It really, really is. It saves so much grief.
Yeah. I mean, how many things in life do you see people just keep on doing because it's just what they're used to and it's just what they know, when really they should have stopped a long time ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm doing. Like, so the podcast is going to go on the road, and like, kind of like what I did at San Diego, like I got to test it out there. Right. I love the idea of a road show like that. It's going to be a blast. So the next time we do this, whether it be at San Diego or otherwise, am I cool enough to come to your comic shop and we can hang out and talk about books?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah. So
you need to ask.
Just
let
I'm
me
Canadian
know beforehand so I make sure I'm there.
Yeah, no. I'm Canadian. It's our nature just to be nice and polite and stuff. Just because, well, honestly, it's just a good way to do business. It's just like, you know what? If I let them know I'm coming, if I ask permission for like just something they're probably going to say yes to, they'll appreciate it, right? It's never a bad thing. No, I just say this. You're a good dude. You make great books, and I wish you the best of luck in the future. I think we have an interview here, good sir. What do you think?
So too. Yeah. Yeah. We've gone for over an hour, and
Yeah.
I didn't even realize it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, okay, we should plug something. Like we need to do like a proper plug here. So, what do you want to do? Like the new
I'll plug
issue?
my website,
Yep.
but I also wanted to just compliment you as well.
Mm.
Because before we're doing this, I actually took the time to go and listen to some of your past interviews, past podcasts. And I have to say that I do like what you're doing as far as it's not a stiff, rigid interview. You don't have a list of questions. It's just like, hey, come on and let's just, shoot the breeze. And let's just talk about whatever we want to talk about. And I enjoy that. It's just a fun conversation. So I just wanted to compliment you on that because it's fun to listen to.
Well, thank you.
As far as pushing anything, the one thing that I want to push is my website, which is collectorscomic.com. And what are you going to find over there? You're going to find the newest comic strip that I do every week. And you're also going to find a recent archive, and you can go and just read more from the previous weeks, previous months, totally for free, not a dime. And then if you like it enough to, hey, I want to support this guy and I want to buy some of the books with material that's not here on the website, you can go and click on the shop link and you can check out the books. There's going to be a 7th collector's annual soon, very soon available there, but there's 6 previous. The first 3 completely sold out. So that's why, and I held it up earlier, that's why I reprinted them all in this big 200-page trade paperback. So you're going to find that if you want to start from the beginning, which you don't need to. I mean, you can attest to this. My comic strip is like reading the Sunday Funnies. You can jump in anywhere and just enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. I will give you a compliment. They made me want to buy the beginning. They actually legitimately did, because I can't stress this enough. It's hysterical. If I were to sum it up as if you ever want to use a blurb in mind for a review, hysterical and heartwarming would be how I would describe your book.
I like that.
Yeah. Right. That's
for people like you. Then if you do want to start from the beginning, you can pick up the trade on my website. And I don't know if you noticed when you were there at the show, but that's the main cover. I also had a good friend of mine, Jay Sullivan, who's a cover artist over at IDW. I had him do a variant cover for the trade. And so
that's
keeping with the Batman theme from the main, that's me and my wife. He made it more realistic of us as Batman and Robin. And there I am as little tiny Robin. So you can start at the beginning and pick up the trades, but you can pick up 4, 5, and 6 in single issues if you just want to get one and give it a try. Like I said, you can jump in anywhere, but you can even just go there every week and read the new comic strip for free and then read the recent archives for free. So check it out. And while you're there, join my mailing list. And, every time I have some type of offer or fun stuff going on, or if I'm going to be at a show, I always shoot out an email to my people on my list, let them know what's going on. And they're always like the first ones to know things.
All right. So I'm going to do a little due diligence with Eddie still on. First off, Eddie, thank you for being my 1,000th guest. Guys, I've done 1,000 episodes.
Amazing. That's a feat.
That is a feat. And I've spent the last 2 weeks actually on my Facebook page. You could probably attest to this, thanking a whole bunch of people through the years. I'm not going to do that completely here because I couldn't do it justice. What I am going to say is, if you've been on my show, I appreciate you greatly. I've been very blessed. I've had the opportunity to meet people like yourself who have done incredible things. So much so that I think, again, it's really easy to take it for granted what you do. But my show's a testament to it. Doing little things every day adds up. It leads to great things down the road. Right this minute, I'm working on a novel that this podcast and the journey I've been on has given me an opportunity to submit to an agent next month. We're going to see how it goes. Fingers crossed. But I mean, that's what I've been working on this last month. I've had lots of opportunities like that. A lot of it has to do with the show. So if you watch this, if you listen to this, I just want to say thank you very much. I'm taking a week off, folks, because I think I've
Well
earned it.
deserved.
Yes. The podcast as a Twitch stream is going to be coming to an end next month on a regular basis. I still haven't decided whether I'm still going to be interviewing people, but it's going to be more of a travel show and a little less a Twitch show. That doesn't mean I'm still not going to do stuff on Twitch. I'm still figuring that out, what that's going to be. But I just want to say this to everybody. Thank you. And that will do it. For everybody watching, everybody listening, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. And I will see you guys all next time in JAG. Yes, it is exciting. I can't wait. Take care, guys.